We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Brock Mogensen of Smart Asset Capital, and Brock and I realized we're both lake people and we don't even know why we're doing this working thing right now. But I don't know about him, but for me, I guess my kids eating is a little bit more important than me spending time on the lake. So Brock, how are you today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Casey.
Absolutely, man. We're always glad to get folks on here that are used to the real estate business and used to syndications, used to capital raising, and especially people that can bring value to our audience and hopefully your audience as well. And who knows, maybe some of our audience will become your audience and your investors and whatever else. So, Brock, why don't you kind of start out? Give us a little background on yourself and tell us, kind of how you got moving towards the real estate business.
Definitely. So I'm based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I grew up just south of Milwaukee. And about 5 years ago, I decided to buy a duplex, and it was an accumulation of just seeing, my dad had owned 2 duplexes growing up, and I saw, both my parents came from very blue collar jobs, and I saw just 4 units, what that can do to your lifestyle, right? Having that extra income coming in each month, what that could do. So I knew out of college, like, hey, I'm going to try to buy a duplex, save up some money, did the house hack thing. That's all, really at that time, that's all that was on my mind, was I just wanted to buy a duplex. I just knew the right thing to do. So did that. Instantly, it was like, this is awesome. I'm living in one side, renting out the other. I had roommates. Living for free. I think I was making like $500 a month too. And I was like, this is great. How do I do more of it? And went down a few different avenues, right? Like I think a lot of people do, try to do the flipping, wholesaling. Just wasn't having much luck finding deals doing that. And that's when I came across this concept of syndication. So decided, hey, this is how I'm actually going to build a business, leave the job I had to go full time and actually create a company. And so spent some time learning as much as I could about it. Quickly then found out that there's no way I could do this on my own. Didn't have the experience, didn't have the money, no way I could do this on my own. Let me go out and try to find partners, which I did. End up finding 2 partners that had some more experience, just buying properties on their own. We all like the idea of syndication. So we came together and started syndicating real estate, and a few, 5-6 deals after that. And a few years later, I was able to leave my job and go full time into real estate. And I love it. It's a great model, and I'm excited to continue to grow it.
Sure. Yeah, man. And that's the goal of so many people, especially our audience out there that's basically beating their head against the desk at their 9 to 5, trying to make that escape route of saying, hey, how do I do this? And it's, to me, and it's difficult sometimes, but to me, it's hard to understand people not being able to grasp this concept. And I guess at the same time, I say that, and then, my wife is one of those very black and white people. Like, it's either black or it's white. There's no, hey, this might work or this might not work. It either works or it doesn't. Right. And so sometimes trying to explain some of these concepts to her, the syndication and so on, she understands it now, obviously, but it just took, I had to take various different angles at it before she finally was like, oh yeah, so you're buying part of it. And so what for you was the biggest challenge in trying to get things going? I know, like, for instance, for us, it was the funding, it was the money because no matter how you look at it, man, you're still, even if you were to do a bare bones, absolutely minimum syndication, you're talking 25 grand. Just like I'm talking about, like if you were to just do a bare bones, I mean, something that you just maybe even you knew the people you were raising capital from, but so that was our biggest challenge in the beginning, was trying to figure, okay, hey, where do we get, we got to put this money here because we got to have so much over here for that. We got to have so much over here for that. And then we've got to have this to get started. So for you, what was you or your team or whoever you had kind of put together there? What was your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge, definitely similar, was just overall, personally, I didn't have much experience, right? I mean, I did a duplex. It's the only deal I did. I listened to all the podcasts, read all the books, and had that knowledge. But so there was definitely kind of the factor of just not having the true experience, but having a partner that already had a portfolio of a couple hundred units, property management company. I mean, all that, being able to leverage when I'm talking. So that tied right into raising capital. I definitely, on that first deal, I was a minimal contribution on raising the capital.
Sure.
So that was definitely the biggest hurdle on that first one, was just the experience levels. And even on the second and third one, right? I mean, it was still relatively low experience. And it's hard to raise money when you're not able to leverage a track record or talk about stuff you've done in the past. So that the first couple were a struggle. I mean, but now that we've done a handful more of them, it becomes easier. When we've sold a few deals, we can leverage that stat. I mean, it becomes a little bit, it's still tough. I mean, I think a lot of times people say, find the deal and raising the money is super easy. I personally think, might be a contrary opinion, but raising money is never easy. And if you have a great deal, I think it's still tough. Until you get to the point where you have a massive network, then I think it becomes easy.
And you're right. And and I tell you what, I had a lady tell me, a lady that I was working with in the auction business several years ago. And we were just trying to get this auction business off the ground, right? And we were running ads, we were doing this, we were taking out, this is at the time when we were doing newspaper ads and so on, right? And so I learned real quick, or she told me, she said, listen, because we were struggling. I mean, it was like we were just bleeding money into these ads, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, and she made us, after she made the statement, that in order to the best way to advertise is to have something to advertise, right? Because if you're out there trying to say, hey, I'm Brock and I'm with Smart Asset Capital and we're looking to raise money for our future deals, man, nobody gives a shit about that, right? They don't care. They're like, oh, Brock, so what, Brock? You're 1 in 1,000. You say, hey, my name's Brock, and I got a deal that's going to pay an 8% pref. You're going to get obviously you have to go through the hurdles are now lower. There's a few more of them, but the hurdles are now lower by you just saying, okay, hey, what's a pref? The pref is this. What's a split? This is this. What's a hurdle? This is that. And once you explain that, but did you find that once, what do you think, in your opinion, if somebody had a deal, like let's say I called somebody up and said, hey, I've got this deal, it's going to pay a 10% pref. What's a pref? And once they learn what that stuff is, do you think that's going to make it much easier than saying, hey, my name's Casey and I'm looking to raise capital?
Totally. And I definitely experienced that, where it's like, if you can explain the concept to someone, it becomes much easier to raise the capital from them. If they're not, and it's amazing. I mean, how many people high income earners out there don't know what syndication is and aren't aware that it's an avenue. So when you can find someone that's, has the money, is very interested in getting involved in real estate, but they always thought, hey, I have to be a landlord and I don't want to do that responsibility. When you can introduce syndication to them and thoroughly and properly explain, hey, this is how it works. This is going to be your role. This is going to be our role. And when you become that kind of expert in explaining how it works, it's much easier to raise capital from that. So totally, yeah. When you find those people and become very knowledgeable and explaining in a simplistic term, it's easy to get complicated and start talking about hurdles right away and all that. But explain it to them in a more simple manner, and it'll help a lot.
Yeah, and the thing is that the biggest thing that I realized with the SEC was they really, the number one thing it seemed like with these syndications and these structures that they focused on, or that they like, that will get them knocking on your front door pretty much faster than anything, is by use of the word guarantee. And the thing that I had to overcome was not necessarily like, you can't guarantee the return, but what you would say is the only guarantee that there is with this structure is that you're going to get paid before we get paid, or before, you're going to get paid. You're right after the bank,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Yep.
And that's the only guarantee that you could really give. But and once people get that concept that, hey, I'm going to be getting these returns, and then of course, once you start saying, hey, we're not making anything, we're on this, we're focusing on a back end split. We might get a little bit for management along the way, but we're focused on a back end split, while the pref return basically takes up all the cash flow, or the majority of the cash flow anyway. So tell us about that first deal, man. I mean, I know you said it was a struggle, but man, I mean, I want to hear numbers. I want to hear struggle. I want to hear about the push-ups and the sit-ups and the sweat that it took to get it done. So tell us a little bit about that first deal and and then honestly, I want to hear about what kind of mental toll it took on you to get it done.
Yeah. So the first syndication deal we did was 89 units, rougher part of town. So it's about
What town?
In a rougher part of town. So there was,
in Wisconsin,
in Milwaukee. Yep.
Oh, Milwaukee. I mean, yeah.
Yep, correct. Yeah. So,
okay.
About $3.5 million deal. I think our raise was just around $1 million.
Oh, wow.
So that was the first one, right? So we're raising the capital. We did very favorable structure to LPs. I think we did a straight up 80-20 split. We kept it pretty simple.
Sure.
Took some smaller dollar amounts on the investment. So we had a pretty big pool of investors on that deal. And
now, time out. Where did you find these investors?
Mostly, so
B or C?
Yeah, on that first one, my partners raised most of the capital. I had a few people come in, but a lot from existing relationships, and also we host
506B, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And we host a local like networking meetup event too. So we had a couple people come through that wanted to get involved. So yeah, it was just kind of piecing a lot of stuff together and really scrambling to raise all the money, and a lot of learning lessons on the first one. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we learned a lot. Just that was our first, as far as processes of what the steps you need to take to properly do it in the front end, and then due diligence items. I mean, just a whole bunch of things that we learned. Overall, going to be a great deal, but we learned a lot. And, and I think you continuously learn, right? Every one you do, there's a few items that you add to your checklist in the future. And, but yeah, that was that first deal. And that's what kind of launched everything after that. We were able to take that experience, then do the next one and the next one.
Have you taken that deal full cycle yet?
Not yet. No, that was about a little over 3 years ago.
Okay.
So we're still, we're kind of going through the business plan right now. So we have some time left.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. And sometimes, man, that was a hard part for us to figure out was, you make those business plans. And a lot of times I tend to be the type of individual that says, man, if I'm planning on doing something on February 26th, by God, it's going to be done on February 26th, or I'm going to make, and that was probably one of the biggest challenges for me, was realizing that, hey, man, a lot of this stuff is not like, you can't carve this stuff in stone, because you might not have quite the unit turnover. You might have to go deeper on some units and not on others. And it just didn't ever really work out where you could just really give a solid idea of, say, hey, this is where we plan to be on these figures. Now you could give projections, but what was your main strategy there? Maybe like rent increase or flipping the units into, like new carpet paint, upgrading appliances or whatever. What was the main strategy?
Yeah. So on that first one, it was combination of a few things: lowering operating expenses. There was some rent increase opportunities. So we did, smaller end flips. Let's say about $4,000 or $5,000 flips on the units. Put some LVP flooring in, increased the rents by $100, added a couple fees, some utility build back fees in there. Overall, when we took over the property, it was a pretty rough tenant base. I mean, there was a lot of evictions to be had. We ended up evicting over 50% of the units in the first 6 months.
Wow.
So we, and again, that was one of the learning lessons, right? Was just kind of doing a little bit more due diligence there. So we had a lot of evictions, a lot of unit turns on the front end. we're able to kind of increase the value add there pretty quickly, but also dent the cash flow a decent amount too during that time. So
Sure.
yeah, that was some learning lessons, but it's going to work out.
Now, where did you find the deal?
That was through a broker.
Okay.
Yeah, just through.
So broker just called you up and said, "Hey, man, we got this complex down here." And how many units did you say?
That was 89.
So it was pretty sizable. But man, I mean, dude, $3 million for 89 units, son.
Yeah.
That's woo. What is that? 30 something thousand, 30,000 a unit, right?
Yeah, it was around 40, a little under 40 a door, I think. So it was yeah, so like I said, and we learned now we don't really want to be involved in it's just so management intensive in those, in some of
Well,
those areas.
yeah. Yeah, once that management starts to take over, and that's why, man, I like I've heard I guess what the age old argument in this business is vertically integrated or no,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in-house property management or no, in-house construction or no. But when you start looking at those, and basically you're taking on a whole separate system, right? A whole separate management way of management, I guess, and then you're having to not only that you throw the wild, it's always a wild card when you start putting people and personalities into things from both the renter standpoint and the manager standpoint or your property managers, whatever, right? And so it just, I guess it's the age old argument. I guess it always will be whether to manage or not, and vertically integrate or not. Now, I know a lot of your institutional investor money likes to see vertically integrated
Mm-hmm.
because they say once that money hits that desk when it comes in, it's controlled all the way to their pocket, right? They've got all the way across, and they don't have secretaries needing $100 to make their rent payment or their electric bill or whatever, that are not joined at the hip with everything else. So yeah, and so how much longer on the business plan on that deal?
A couple more years, I would say. And we have a prepayment penalty on that one up till year 7.
What type of loan?
So we did Fannie Mae on that.
Okay,
That was,
did you have a KP on that? Was one of your guys there a KP, or how did that work?
no, yeah, just us three. Us three were able to. So one of our partners is like I said, had some experience already and had the track record that satisfied it enough to do that deal. So that was our
Good.
first agency debt deal. Not to derail this topic, but we've just done we just do local bank financing. I mean,
Well, and I've
don't
heard
want
a
you.
lot of people going to the local banks, man. I tell you what, I was on the phone with my local bank the other day, and as of today, let's see, because this will air later on. Today's August 16th. They were like 4.75 on a
Mm-hmm.
20-year, 5-year arm, or whatever.
Yep.
So it's fixed for 5 years, 20-year AM. 4.75. Now we weren't talking a great deal of money, but like 300,000 or something like that. It wasn't a lot, but what I'm getting at, it's the same thing like what you're saying. I mean, whether it's 300,000 or 30 million, I don't know if that bank can loan you 30 million or not, but
Yep.
it's the same deal because some of that bigger stuff, the interest rates are higher right now. And I don't know that now, was it recourse or non-recourse?
So it was non-recourse, right? So that's
Oh, wow,
because local
man,
banks.
that's awesome for your first deal, dude.
It was, yeah. So the recourse aspect is the biggest argument factor for sure. But I mean, just to give an example, I mean, so when COVID hit that property, we had I think about 20% of our tenants not pay rent for a year. Walked into the leasing office and said, "Hey, not going to pay rent. Can't do anything about it." So we call our lender, right? Hey, explain the situation, and hopefully no one from Fannie Mae's listening to this, but they're pretty much like, sorry, nothing we can do. Figure it out. That was the call, right? If that was a local
Yeah.
bank financing that deal, and we call one of our
Yep.
guys that we have a good relationship with, 100% they would have helped out. Maybe let's do some interest only for 6 months. Let's figure out how to get through this. So that, to me, that's the biggest difference is when stuff hits the fan and there's on certain deal that's going to happen. Having that flexibility to know like, hey, we got a partner in our corner that can help us out instead of agency. They really don't want to help you out.
Yeah, I agree. You could, and I've done that before too, where you just instinctively call, you foresee something coming and you call the banker and you're like, hey man, listen, do you think we might be able to work out a 6-month interest only section here, or 90 days interest only, and generally, as long as you have a good track record, I'm not saying all banks will all the time say, oh yeah, let's do that. But you got the banks in it for the interest. And if whatever portion that you're asking about is a small percentage of your total portfolio with them or whatever, generally they're going to say, yeah, cool, man. We'll try to, as long as we cover the interest, we'll be in good shape, because that's their profit. Right. So, so how many doors in total do you all have now? And is it the same 3 partners that you started with? I mean, same 3 of you all, or have you all expanded?
Say us 3 still are the team. So the doors question. So we did that deal. We've done a few other multifamily deals, but we kind of did a pivot, and now we're still looking at multifamily. We're more heavy in the triple net space now. So we're doing industrial, self-storage, industrial mostly. Sure. That's mostly what we're doing now, and kind of where I see us going over the next couple of years. We've seen some opportunity. I think in our local market, it's a good asset class. So we're trying to double down.
Do you think local banks are the best option for that kind of stuff too? I mean, just like, I'm not even, when I say local, I'm talking about like local. I'm not talking about like Wells Fargo or Bank of America. They all have local branches, but you're talking about like your small hometown. And do you generally try to, are you all generally in the same geographical area with everything right now?
Yep. Our radius of Milwaukee is kind of our target spot.
Man, I'll tell you, the last time when I was in Milwaukee about probably 15 years ago, I say 15, it's probably been 12, maybe even 20 years ago. Man, I'm old, right? But I just didn't realize that like Milwaukee is almost like the backbone of America. Like it really is probably one of the most industrial areas that I've really ever seen. I mean, as far as just like, I mean, you start at Harley Davidson, right? Mm-hmm. And just goes out from there, and it's just all industry. And it was just really, we did a school college trip there to Milwaukee and saw several factories and several processes and some other stuff going on. And I was just floored at just how industrial it was.
It definitely, yeah. I mean, it's, the Rust Belt, right? I mean, so there's a lot of manufacturing going on, and that's part of the reason why it's, Milwaukee as a whole, if you look at population growth, job growth, I mean, it's pretty flat, not losing like some states, but pretty flat.
Sure.
So that's why I think, us kind of going more in the industrial space, there's a lot of people doing it, right? But it's something a little bit different and more of like a niche we're trying to build on.
Well, and it gives you a little diversification there. And honestly, if you have a little diversification as far as the workforce goes there, you got diversification from multifamily to self-storage, which arguably could be tied pretty close to one another depending upon how long your people stay, right? And then you throw that other element in there of industrial type stuff, and basically if the economy is expanding or even at a level playing field, because I didn't even realize, the other thing that I didn't realize until we were in Milwaukee as well was, I don't even know that there's a defining line between Chicago and Milwaukee. Is there? I mean, is there a spot where I don't even remember. It's just almost like we left south of Milwaukee and it was like no time we were in Chicago. Like Chicago started, or the Chicago traffic started rather.
Yeah. So I actually grew up in the town that borders Illinois and Wisconsin, Kenosha, which has become a famous town
sure.
for unfortunate reasons. But so that's where I grew up. But yeah, it's that kind of divide. That's the next biggest town from Chicago.
But it's almost one big metro. I mean, it's almost one big area for argument's sake, could somebody not live in northern Chicago and trek to southern Milwaukee on a daily?
Totally. Yeah.
I mean,
do that.
Hour, 45 minutes, something like that.
Not even. Yeah. An hour and a half.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cashflow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show. So I feel like that's why the labor force is so strong there, because it does pull a lot of that middle class comes up there to work. I mean, I remember how many people, Harley Davidson alone employed there, but it was just anyway. So the industry space up there, man, I think is a fairly solid move. I feel like as long as it's coupled with something, because you're always going to have your Milwaukeeans that live there, that are from there, that are, Brewers fans and whatever else,
Yeah.
And so those people, I think, but anyway, that discussion could go on. So what kind of cap rates are you all looking at on some of that industrial stuff? Triple net.
Yeah, it's really tied to like the tenant and the lease length.
Sure.
We earlier this year we did a 10 cap industrial deal on a sale leaseback.
Wow.
So,
but that's today. So what? But when you're talking 10 cap today, what does your IRR look like?
Our projected IRR on that deal, we were 19-20% in that range.
So that held up too. Then I mean, because a lot of times when you see a 10 cap on triple net stuff, sometimes I get a little leery about projecting those lease renewals. You know what I'm saying?
That's the hard part. That's the hard part.
To me, that could be safer to come down to like a 16, 17 IRR or projected IRR and keep the 10 cap up front. So then that it gives a fair balance to say, hey, these people are on a 5-year lease, but that's not guaranteed that they'll be here on the 6th year.
That's the hardest part when it comes to the underwriting. The difference is
underwriting nerd talk, right?
Yep.
That's just things that get me going is projections, man. I've always been not like a devil's advocate kind of person where I'm like, hey man, that's great, but what about this? My kids, it aggravates the hell out of them. But anyway, so so you all are moving into that space, and you did a 10 cap. Can you tell us a little bit about that deal? What some of the specs were, just so we kind of have some context.
Yeah, so sale leaseback deal,
okay.
So that's a deal we're targeting pretty heavily now. I mean, quick definite. I mean, so it's a business that owns the property, right? They want to sell. They want to sell their property and lease it back. So it's advantageous to both sides. The business gets a liquidity event, inject the capital into their business, which is ultimately what they're trying to grow. We get a deal at usually a little bit more favorable terms, the tenant in place that's committed to the space. That's what a sale leaseback is, and that's what we're targeting pretty good right now. But so did that. Got it at the 10 cap. So we gave them pretty favorable lease terms, 3-year lease back, but ton of demand, 98.2% occupancy rate in that market. So we felt confident if they didn't renew, we place a new tenant in on a longer term lease and sell with that long-term lease in place. So, and again, being very conservative on, we used a 1.5-year lease up time. So it could sit vacant for 1.5 years. So there's,
wow.
We're conservative on all of our, I mean, that's kind of what I do is underwriting. And I mean, so I'm super conservative there, but that's the hard part. The hardest part is compared to multifamily, right? I mean, 5 to 10% vacancy, you're safe, right? In industrial, you don't know in year 5, are you going to find a tenant that next week or the next year? It's a big difference, right? In the numbers, and you can't really project that. You can look at what occupancy rates are, but it's kind of a guess. So that's the hardest part. So we just, go err on the side of being, cautious. And if it gets vacant, if we fill it up earlier, then great. The numbers are better.
Yep. Well, awesome, man. All right. Well, good conversation. I appreciate everything you've told us. I know that you've kind of been through the ringer as far as getting started up and getting going. So it's really I think it's good for the listeners, the newer folks that are in our audience to hear those things that, hey, this is not a all gravy, all icing business. This is a business where you get in, you grunt for a little while, you sweat for a little while, you sleepless nights for a little while, and then, but as long as you get up every day and kick ass, then you get to be like Brock. So, and he'll be signing autographs after the show. So. But Brock, listen, man, thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate it. And we've got a couple of questions that we ask every guest that comes on the show, just so we can get some insight into who you are and what you maybe like or enjoy in life. But the first of those is, what is the best book that you have recently read or are currently reading?
I really like I reread it actually recently, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. I mean,
man, the haters out there hate. They always will. Grant is just, the few times that I've been able to talk to him just one-on-one, he's always he's just as amped up in life as he is in his books and on his Instagram and everywhere else. But dude, that book just makes so much sense.
Exactly.
And it's just like, it's exactly what I just said. You wake up every day and you kick ass. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Yep.
And if you think one's good enough, if you think two's good enough, it's not. Go to 10. And it's self-explanatory. I'll tell you one of the biggest takeaways, and I think it was that book. I'm gonna tell you one of the biggest takeaways from, it was one of his books, but I believe it was that one, was he said, as hard as it is to cut the people in your life that are holding you back out, it has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
You have no choice, because people don't want to see other people succeed. Get rid of them. So cool, man. Great. Good call on that one. Next question is, what is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
Oh, that's a great question. Just travel around Europe more. I did that a while ago, but I'd love to be able to just take a month and just experience different countries and different cultures around there. It's just so much cool stuff to see, I think.
Yeah. And I would absolutely agree with you 100% that, that Europe, the amount of culture that you can get on one continent is basically endless for all intents and purposes. So
exactly.
Anyhow, so Brock, how can the listeners reach out and get in touch with you if they heard something that, if they, like, let's say they wanted to invest in one of your industrial deals, or you had a new industrial deal that they wanted to hear about or go to your website or whatever, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So our company website is smartassetcapital.com. There's a contact form on there, just fill that out. We can hop on a call and that'll go to me and answer any questions too, if you just have general questions. Also on Instagram, doing quite a bit and trying to post more real estate content there. So that's just my first and last name, Brock Mogensen. But yeah, hit me up. Happy to connect.
And if you're out there and you heard that, that's Mogensen, not Morganson. Do not add the R or you will not get in touch with him. So don't add the R, and there's your guy. So Brock, man, thank you so much for being with us and taking time to be with us. And listeners, as always, please head down and leave us a 5-star review, and also type a review so that others may know what we talk about here on the Cashflow Pro. And while you're there, smash that subscribe button so that you can be notified when we release new episodes and new content. And I want to thank you all for listening today. It's been a wonderful experience. Brock, man, thanks again. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you tomorrow.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.